Tell with pride that the Sephardic world has a future because of the initiatives that Yehuda is bringing to the world, the time and energy that he is spending on behalf of all his Sephardim that are all over the world. So I'd like to thank him for being here and for Beth Hashem inspiring us to do the Shabbat.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning. I'd just like to, first of all, like to thank the rabbi and the community for having me here, for bringing me out all the way from Toronto. And a wonderful community over here. Like you said, my brother came here 10 years ago, part of the SEED program. He came here for 3 weeks and spoke very, very highly about this community. Hashem should continue to bless this community, the rabbi, and the entire Kehillah tenfold to continue in the ways of Hashem. I want to also mention, before I start, yesterday the rabbi and I, as he mentioned, we took a nice walk at Stanley Park for a good hour. We really got to know each other. And I felt that there's, like he said, there's a future within this Sephardim. I feel that there are, unfortunately, as the rabbi even mentioned once, there's a lack of leadership. When I see the rabbi all the way here in Vancouver, okay, that there's a leader who's purely following the ways of our Chachamim and the pure Sephardic heritage, I feel that there's definitely a future within the rabbinate, within the Sephardic rabbinate. And Bezrat Hashem, you can not only, you should not only have the strength to inspire the Vancouver Sephardic community and the Ashkenaz community, but as well as communities worldwide from his unique and special perspective on Sephardic Judaism. I like to talk about the Sephardic legacy. Sephardic Legacy series was founded in 2007, and it's called Sephardic Legacy Series Institute for Preserving Sephardic Heritage. Roughly in 2004, I was 18 at the time, and I attended Yeshivat Mikdash Melech, a Syrian yeshiva. There's a branch in Brooklyn, and as well as a branch in Israel. And when I was there, I was very curious.
David Lapian, right?
Correct. David Lapian and Rabbi Hamidrash, correct. So when I was there, I was always reading, and I was always reading books on rabbis, period. So I had an entire library there, and then it dawned upon me that I'm like, okay, it's about time that we have to have Sephardic rabbis. There's nothing. So when I was in Israel, I was 18, even sometimes you would skip a little bit of yeshiva, maybe I shouldn't say that. And I would go to the libraries and archives and travel around all over the place. And in all honesty, it bothered me that there was really nothing on our heritage. Nothing substantial, nothing in English, okay? And in Hebrew there definitely is. So I was heading to many archives and so on and so forth. I got nowhere, I couldn't find anything. So eventually I complained to a few Sephardic rabbis, a few prominent rabbis. One of them was Chacham Ovadia Yosef. And I told him, I was 18 at the time, I met him once before that when I was 16 in Yechavedat in Har Nof. Then another time 18. And he says, you should take the initiative. A year passed, I took no initiative. I didn't follow suit, and I felt that the following year I moved to Lakewood, New Jersey. And when I was in Lakewood, and it's predominantly Ashkenazi, in Lakewood, New Jersey. And when I was in Lakewood there, I went to the Judaica stores and so on and so forth. Again, I said nothing. And I said, now it's really getting to me. I was 19, there was nothing on the Ben Ishchai, the Yehuda, whoever it may be. Think of it, there was nothing. So when I was in Lakewood, I took upon the initiative on myself. I said, if not now, then when? And I'm going to start going ahead and moving forward. So I was in a small yeshiva, I was 19 at the time, and I took, and I'm sure you guys remember those discs that you put in, little square discs that you put in a computer. So each disc was a chacham. That's what it was, that's the memory that it was able to keep. And I don't think I've even mentioned this story. So each chacham was each disc. So at 25 tzaddikim, 25 discs. So then eventually I compiled them, and then I promoted it at the age of 20 at my Shabbat Barachot, a small little pamphlet. And from then it led me to an actual publication. But where did all this come from? And it's a zichut, it's definitely a merit for me on my end, but it didn't come easy. It didn't come easy whatsoever. So basically there were three components that led me to this. There are three main things, and the three of them are the following. It was family, community, and filling the void. So the first one was family. I had a lot of support by my family. In other words, I grew up in an authentic Sephardic community in Toronto. And the Sephardic community is very interesting. It has more or less 12,000 Sephardic Jews, predominantly Moroccan, and a school, synagogues, and so on. And they were very well versed within their Moroccan heritage, especially Chacham Amram Masayeg, who I have a lot of, and I'm very indebted to him. He's definitely the most influential Sephardic rabbi, very knowledgeable in the field of scholarship in general, but his contributions towards Sephardic Chachamim in just education is just amazing. I could go on and talking about his greatness, but that's not for now. I could save it for another time. So it was my parents, the schools that I attended to, the rabbis that I was surrounded by, and they kept me and my family, and as well as the entire community, sort of like in a bubble, literally in a bubble. The first time I heard, according to my memory, of Ashkenaz pronunciation, I'm not joking, this is nothing, of course, in any form of negative notation whatsoever. Well, exactly. My wife is half Ashkenaz, best of both worlds, I always say. Was in 8th grade. And I was like, me and my friends were looking at each other, like, what's going on here? We weren't familiar with it. Until later on, I went to Ashkenazi yeshivot, and like I said earlier, I got best of both worlds. So it was very new to me. But yet, unfortunately, I always say that Sephardic Jews do not document their history as well as Ashkenazim do. And I said, I know I'm doing this. I spoke to rabbis. I didn't think I would ever possibly read any books, or launch an institution. However, Baruch Hashem, it came to that initiative. Fine. So it was a buildup of all that. Another thing was the community. The Sephardic community there is very unique. And they would have numerous hilulot. And they would have an event. For example, the Sephardic school there has an event once a year annually for the memory of the Baba Sali, which is roughly in January time. So they would have a hilula. They would raise roughly 75 to 100 grand yearly. It's the main event. It's a lot of money. But the question is that I asked myself, I said, this community is amazing. They would pack up a hall of 500 people in Toronto. They would have a hilula. People would throw money. Baruch Hashem, and they should continue. However, they really know who the Baba Sali was. They knew that his great-grandfather possibly flew on a carpet, that he drank mafia. Correct. And so on and so forth. They knew the basics. They knew, okay, a nice few stories, but a bit more than that. Did he publish, which he wrote, Sefer Ahavat Yisrael? What did he do? His accomplishments and so on and so forth. His scholarship. Nothing was really recorded in the English world. In Hebrew, pretty much it was. So I said, which is the third component, was filling the void. I said, these Moroccans are wonderful. These Sephardim are wonderful. They have to take the next step. They have to really educate themselves and not just be spiritually inspired, but as well as intellectually inspired. So it's both components that come together, the mind and the heart. So I said to myself, okay, let's. I'll take this initiative and take it upon myself. So, as I mentioned earlier, by seeing the void, I saw the void in many communities. I used to live in Lakewood, New Jersey. When I was there, I attended a kollel there. Rabbi Ezra's a friend, all Syrian. So I was also very involved within the Syrian community. For 4 years, I prayed with them, went to the camps, schools, yeshivot, and so on. I love their community. The community should continue to have a lot of hatzlacha. Now, I saw the same thing in the same community. Roughly 150,000 Sephardic Jews, if not even more. But again, there was nothing written about the rabbis, nothing, aside even from rabbis, just about their heritage, and well documented in English. So I said to myself, and I spoke to rabbis, got a lot of encouragement, that I said I had to do this. And I looked at it in the sake of for my children. I have a daughter that's 6 years old today, and I have another daughter that's 3. And I said, what are my kids going to grow up with? What are my kids? And of course they should always read Ashkenaz stories on rabbis and so on and so forth. That's beautiful. And it should always be promoted. However, how about our own? We have to know ourselves first, our history, then we should start knowing others, instead of the other way around, I believe. everything without a question is equal, but you have to know where your roots come from. If you don't know your roots, where you come from, it's sad. It's very, very sad, because this is the generation, I believe. This is the most scariest time, I believe, for the Sephardic world. I think in the next 2 decades, that if we don't capture in so many different ways our stories, our history, the culture, the chachamim, everything, halakha, whatever you can think of, we're doomed to fail. It's guaranteed, without a question. I've spoken to hundreds of rabbis, scholars, academics. I could go on and on and on. It's irrelevant. The point being is that it's now. Now's the time. And this is Bezrat Hashem throughout the Shabbat, and after Shabbat I'll be talking about this. So in essence, it was my children who also gave me sort of like my own internal incentive, and as well as for other children within the Sephardic and Ashkenaz community. My greatest success story is when I see Ashkenazim picking up books. Is when I see Ashkenazim learning from the Sephardic books, because they are not just Sephardic rabbis. They're just generally Jewish rabbis. But it happens to be that their background, of course, is from the Orient, is from Sephardic lands, and so on and so forth. So that is when I'm internally happy. So I was once, at 21, I went back to Israel, and I went back to Hamidrash Yosef, and I told him that Baruch Hashem had started, and he gave me Baruch that I should continue. But I felt that it was too much pressure. And Baruch Hashem, now I created an entire institute where basically delegating different authors, scholars, rabbis, Rosh Kolelim from literally around the world who are publishing. And as someone told me recently the other day, my friend who's the president of a Sephardic Legacy Series as of last month, the goal and the idea is to be like pretty much the Sephardic art scroll, not necessarily with the same ideology, however within their own internal accomplishments. So Bezrat Hashem, and with your support, by just even reading them and picking them up, it'll be a zechut that said they keep it for your families. So this is the idea, that the idea is one word, is to reconnect. Reconnect to our Sephardic heritage, whether it's through Tripoli, whether it's through Morocco, Syria, whoever it may be, because this is the time in all formats, in any possible way. So this is it, Bezrat Hashem, the Shabbat, hopefully I can continue to inspire and to educate on this topic, and hopefully we can engage, have dialogue, and even possibly debate on such an essential topic for the benefit of our Sephardic communities for now, and as well as for the future. Thank you very much. If any questions, thank you. If any questions.
I tell you one of the things you were talking about there. Rabbi Liel, his brother Asher, was my father's Talmud number 1. My father's summer camp about 55 years ago.
Wow.
His brother was just lived, unfortunately, in Gershon.
Correct.
And he was my Rebbe in this area 36 years. I'm going on in Azoulay. My cousin's wife is Azoulay from California.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but Radio Fassi was the Gab of the Benesh Papa Salim.
Correct.
Learned Gates at the same time as me. But that had been a Sarah, father founded the main code of his code. He asked them to put everything to 100%. My father started curing them in 1942. He was sleeping for 30 years.
Wow.
But that's what was to go with my go on and on.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you speak about dominance, it's only called dominance, that's all.
Sure.
One word, dominance. That's what it is.
You know, I'm really fascinated by Sephardic heritage and actually Sephardic identity is what I prefer to look at it. And, you know, if you go back to the whole Jewish race per se, and Sephardim, you know, back in Cordova, over 1,000 years ago. In fact, I think Cordova was called Sepharad. You know, that was, you know, really the heritage. So I can speak about my heritage in that, you know, my family came from Spain. They were expelled in 1492. And my family went to Halab, to Syria. Other Jews went to Morocco, Savannah, etc. But, you know, the heritage that you speak about and the identity, and you mentioned family, you know, and personally, I look at the Syrian community in Brooklyn, which is my family, or in Panama.
Which is very familiar, I'm very familiar with both.
My Panama. Rabbi Yosef, Abadi Yosef is related through my mother's side. So there is, you know, a big connection. We have a very large family. But it comes back to, I mean, I look at how the Syrian community progressed. I remember when I was 8 years old, actually visiting in Brooklyn. Before you were born. And, you know, it's the essence. I mean, you look at this table here today. Is there anything Sephardic about lots of Lego? You know, you start thinking about what has happened to the Sephardic in all the Sephardic of it. You know, it was a food. It was.
Li 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 li